Today I'm with Sandhi
Bhide.
Bhide. Yes. And I want to welcome you. I'm excited. We're going to have a wonderful opportunity to learn about you and just get your insight around innovation. And we have many inventors, both locally, regionally, and nationally, that will be listening to this video. So welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes, great. So as you know, my name is Kedma, and I'm the director for the Small Business Development Center, and we really are excited to have you. And so one of the things that I'm going to ask is just to tell us a little bit about who you are and maybe a little bit about your experience, and also how did you even get involved with this? Like when you were a little boy, did you say, I want to grow up and do this? Or did you have another vision of, being, sort of taking you on a different path?
Sure. So let me address the second question first. No, I think from early childhood, I think I have a lot of interest in knowing stuff. How does it work? Where it came from? Why is it working this way or that? And whether it was mechanical watches, which early in my life I had gotten spanked for it when I opened up all the watches, separated out, and re-put things back.
Oh my gosh!
or any other thing, whether including scooter engines to anything else, because I had a strong interest in knowing how things work. And I tried to ask, and when I couldn't, I normally asked other people how they did it, or found books through which to figure out how things work.
Wow.
And it is this unique piece, what I call curiosity. I think that's kind of at the root of everything. I think just be curious about anything that is around, and it doesn't have to be in your area. It could be simple things, We wear all shirts and pants and blouses, but how many of us really know how a fabric is made? My mother used to stitch clothes, but to see a human being stitching clothes versus a machine stitching clothes, there is a tremendous amount of curiosity you could have. And then making one piece of slacks versus thousands and thousands of pieces of slack in a factory is another leap. And you have to really know how to cut the fabric, how to make sure the quality of the fabric is good, how these clothes, Levi jeans in thousands, how are they made, and how are they consistently made? Exactly, one is like the other, and you have to have a curious mind. Just ask questions.
So I have a question on that because you mentioned about having a curious mind, which for anyone listening to this would say, well, that's obvious. Everybody has a curious mind. So do you believe everyone has a curious mind, or is it almost a muscle that we have to train ourselves to be aware and build the curiosity? I'm curious to know, because some people, like in my case, I'm a 5th generation entrepreneur. So I was born into curiosity. I'm like this unicorn. And so I'd love to kind of get a sense just from your own family background. It sounds like it was something that was supported, around you. So talk a little bit about sort of your philosophy around curiosity.
The sad part is it wasn't supported.
Wow.
Many times, and that might be just because how I was raised. It might be just because we're from a middle class family. I had to invent stuff as we go, as I went. So there were not very many resources. I came from a middle class family in India, and you didn't get stuff. You had to build stuff.
Got it.
I'll give you an example. Early in my life, I wanted to do a Pelton wheel, which is use force of water to run a Pelton wheel. And attached to that is a small generator that generates electricity. Well, the way I made the buckets of the Pelton wheel is actually, olden times, Bonvita used to come in tins.
Wow.
I would literally take scissors, cut open the bone Vita tin can and cut and make buckets out of that, find a wooden wheel, and actually make buckets around the wooden wheel.
Wow.
When I wanted to make a generator, I actually made I stamped the stators and rotors. I actually wound with copper wire my own generator.
Wow.
I could have gone out in a shop and actually could have built. I could have just bought a ready-made one, but I did all my stampings. I did all my winding generators. I did everything from scratch, and as a result, the theory and practical went together. It wasn't just learning about electromagnetism. It was electromagnetism and then doing it. Mm-hmm. That really put all these concepts deep into my mind. Wow. So asking your question about curiosity, I think everybody's curious. Again, it's a bell-shaped curve. Some people are more curious versus the other. I think the next step is, where do you take that curiosity?
Right.
Somebody gives you an answer. Do you just accept and say, oh, okay? Or you really go back and see that is indeed true. Mm-hmm. And then the next step is to go further and say, can the same thing be done even better? Mm-hmm. So I think last time when we talked, we couldn't capture it on the video, but I think we had mentioned about a pyramid of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom.
Yes.
So you might get data from people when you're curious. You have to convert that into a common set of information.
Right.
And knowledge base, and then the very top is the wisdom, where you actually use everything that you have learned and actually use it. I'll give you another example. Electricity follows a basic Ohm's law. Voltage equal to current times resistance. Mm-hmm. You go into hydrodynamics and you will find exactly the same equation. If there is a tank at a higher potential and there is a pipe which is a resistance, then the current times resistance is the potential. Mm-hmm. So you could learn this data, but it turns into knowledge when you look at multiple systems across, and then you say, hey, there is a common principle that flows through many of these systems. And to be able to step back and say, when you enter into a new territory, to be able to say, do the same things apply there. And
right.
Many times you have seen maybe in Indian mythology that there is a guru who is sitting high up on a pedestal, and all the disciples are sitting on the ground. It is a similar idea. If you want knowledge to flow from your guru to you, you have to hold the guru in higher potential.
I love it.
And remove all the resistance. That's when you are going to get all that knowledge flowing to you. So
I love it.
I went kind of the electrical mechanical systems to human system, but the principle, if you understand the principle underneath, then you can use your curiosity in even going into uncharted territories.
I love it. And I also love that as a potential philosophy for businesses. I see so many businesses that fail on that concept of innovation because they're so afraid of moving away from what they know.
Exactly.
Into the uncharted territory and the risk. And in fact, I connected with an agency about 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to them, and I said, what exactly are you looking for? And I was almost taken aback when the person said, we really want someone who could come in and help inspire innovation and let us know it's okay to take risks. I didn't know what to say.
Exactly.
Right? Because of exactly what you're speaking on. So walk us through sort of your philosophy around innovation. There's so much dialogue these days with makerspace and inventing, and actually there's a lot of concerns right now with the patent process and ensuring that, inventors, are continually supported around innovation. So just walk us through sort of your philosophy around innovation and maybe some of your experiences or an example so that, people listening can really understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. I think innovation has to be centered around business results. To me, that is very important. I just did an interview about a month and a half ago with Design Engineering News. Mm-hmm. I kind of echoed the same sentiment there. Many times I'll give you just one example of Internet of Things. There is so much hype behind it. There is makers
yes,
and there is a lack of focus why we are in business to begin with. It is really because we want to solve a customer's problem, a nagging problem. I think last time when we talked, I talked about my sort of thinking, which I call Tylenol analogy and multivitamin tablet analogy.
I love that. I used that. I have to tell you, I loved it. I want you to share it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. So when you look at a problem, you say, if I have a headache that's really big and it's night 1:00 and I have a morning presentation at 6:00, I'm ready to pay $10 if you have that one tablet, which I really, really need. I'm ready to pay. And that to me is our Tylenol type of problems. Look at a business problem and say, oh my God, my business is hurting. I'm not able to make progress. I'm not going to meet my revenue targets, margin targets, what have you. And that's a nagging problem for which I'm looking for a solution. The other ones are, my business is running pretty okay, but I'm looking for solutions where it will improve the business. And that to me is a multivitamin kind of a problem where I basically say, yeah, life is good, but it will make my life even better. I think the best thing, if you know art, is to convert those Tylenol problems, convert those multivitamin problems into Tylenol problems, to get people's attention. But at the end of the day, I think last time also I gave an example of a HVAC company.
Yes.
They spent $2.5 or so million, and they still didn't see any business results. They didn't see the gains. And I think it's important before we start implementing any of these new innovations to say, who is the end customer or user that's going to benefit by this innovation? What are some of the key results expected? It could be X percentage improvement in efficiency, Y improvement in revenue, Z improvement in margin. It could be defects, whatever that is. Define that up front, and then make sure that all your actions are in support of that objective. And then ongoing, you should look at are you on the same vector to achieve the same objectives. And I think I made a comment last time is, if you have a system integrator who is putting all that for you, then hold them responsible to make sure they actually deliver results.
So let me understand this. I want to make sure I'm paraphrasing correctly. So when you're thinking about this, it's more about what problem you're solving, what are the customer's concerns, and then do you go into looking at developing the product? I mean, at what point do you start really developing, the conceptual piece of a concept or a product or a vision? Is it after the customer validation or as you're going through that?
I think I would say it depends upon the one model you're using. The old model is after you hear from the customer, then you go and implement into the product.
Right.
In the last startup that I did, it was more like what I call near real time. Means we were developing our concepts through an agile process. So every 4 weeks was our cycle. And during that period, whatever we heard from the customer was immediately on the table at the next run of the agile cycle. So it was near, I call near to real time. And once it was implemented, you could immediately deliver it to a customer within the next 4 weeks and say, is that what you want? And that process continues, which is this what you want? Is this what you want? Until we get it right.
I love it. I love it. So I want to share a little bit, because part of your background is you've worked in big business. You came from, organizations like Intel, and you had a lot of resources at your disposal. Hopefully, we'd hope that you had resources. How, if any, is there any correlation with how large organizations can look at innovation versus maybe a solopreneur or a team of just 5? Is there a difference in that, or would you say the phases and the process is fairly the same?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I'll tell you, with big companies, the innovation stifles simply because it takes a long time just to get basic approvals.
Got it.
There are meetings and approvals, and everybody has to see it. Any meeting you attend, you have 20 people, each one giving opinions whether they are content experts or not. And it can take a long time.
Right.
Although the advantage with big companies is I have so many people that I can trust to bounce off my ideas.
Yes.
You aren't necessarily alone. So my thinking is if a company can create a culture where the regular business can go at whatever speed it needs to, but the innovation group really runs separately without a lot of process overhead by somebody who understands ins and outs of processes. I'll give you an example. Last time I did a startup within Intel, a lot of people came back to me and said, have you taken care of this and this and this and this? And they wanted to run against a checklist. And I said, the checklist is here. It is already taken care of while I'm designing the product. So in case of a startup, you don't have the luxury of having people that you can bounce off. Hey, am I on the right track?
Right.
I mean, there is a role for advisors,
of course.
but they are not there where you can just walk into their office, get into on a whiteboard and
right. Right.
So all the startups that I did was where the buck stopped at me. I took the decisions, and my thinking was I had a concept that I ran with my engineers, which was no engineers can sit in the block state more than 15 minutes.
Wow.
If there was a problem, they either IM me, called me, phoned me, texted me,
wow,
came to my office or found me wherever, any time of the day and night. And we got into a conference room with a whiteboard. We outlined what the problem was. We looked at all the possibilities, discussed pluses and minuses. We zeroed in on a solution without overkilling the analysis. and then went ahead with our decisions. And surprisingly, 90% of the decisions were right on. So it is, most of the analysis is asymptotic. Once it reaches, it's just like in school. Whether you get 90% or 91% or 96%, you're still A grade.
Right.
So at some stage, analysis has to stop and say, hey, I'm in the A zone. Go ahead and make the decisions. And if you need to make smaller corrections, you go and make those changes along the way. It's none different than me going to Amsterdam in a plane. I put my nose in the direction of Amsterdam.
Yep.
And there is wind, there are other traffic around, there might be other things happening. And then I do little course correction as long as my nose of my plane is pointing at Amsterdam.
So let me ask you though, because you and I both know that whenever we're building around a concept, sometimes it's just not feasible. You're going through phases, and then it's not feasible. So at what point do you cut the cord and say, look, guys, we cannot move forward anymore? What would be a good reason to not move forward, in your opinion?
We only do that in my mind if we are managing poorly.
Okay. Okay.
Or we are violating laws of physics.
Got it.
Everything else is doable.
Okay. That's good.
See, in case of innovation, you cannot just say, I cannot do it. Then my thinking is, didn't you think about that in the first place before you started?
Right.
I think it's in that context, thinking, a lot of upfront thinking is really important. And then it's a question of rapidly executing. I'm sure there is going to be 1 or 2% of the time when you come across something that you have never thought about. But those chances are pretty small. Just give an example. I look at iPhone. Most of the technology, most of the sensors were known for the last 40 years.
Yes.
It is a unique combination of technology, the integration that creates a bigger wow. Now, does that mean there aren't any fundamental research required? Well, that's a small percentage. Right. I'm creating something so new that nobody in the world has ever created before.
Right.
Most of the innovation is integrating existing knowledge into a package that wows the customer.
I love it. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I was listening to a podcast this weekend from a gentleman who came from HP. And he said in his opinion, it's not how good or how bad the idea is, it's the timing.
It is the timing.
Do you agree?
Absolutely, I agree. I absolutely agree.
It's the timing.
It's the timing, and that's another place where most companies completely miss that. It has to be right when the customer is ready. Right? So there is a little bit of trick in terms of, since you mentioned timing, there are two types of learning, right? One set of problems where customers actually tell you, hey, here is my problem, solve it. Now, if you are sitting in their shoes, you should know what problems not only they're facing today, but what problems they're likely to face 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Okay.
And have answers, concepts ready ahead of time. So whenever the right time is, you're already there. So it's not when you think when the right time is and then you start creating products or concepts or innovations.
Mm-hmm.
It is doing that ahead of time. So when it comes to putting a product in the market, you are at the right time.
Okay, but there's some things that there's always a right time. There's always a right time to lose weight. There's always a right time to be healthy. There's always a right time to feel younger. So how do you work with the reality of there's needs, there's problems to be solved, and do you sort of tackle the right problem for the right time that you have the experience as a team to do? How do you maneuver through, we have problems already in the world, and sort of mitigate what's the best idea to go forward with?
I think it's by the way, this might be a little bit of diversion, but I don't know if you have seen a model. It's a University of Hawaii model. It's a 4-quadrant model as to where the industries are.
No.
So let me give you an example. One where it's a growth industry. That means the business is growing, the opportunity is growing,
mm-hmm.
and you have certain set of things that you could do to maximize, and the timing is always right because you're in the middle of the process where things are growing. The second set is the innovation has already occurred, and now it has leveled off, almost leveled off. So there is innovation, but not at the same rate.
Okay.
Right. So you can look at tablets, for example. They went through a tremendous amount of growth, and they are still being produced, but it's not going through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's kind of a flat business.
Mm-hmm.
The third model is where it's a declining market.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have strategies where you can make money even in the declining market. Even in a declining market, you can figure out what customer needs are and meet those needs in the declining market. The strategies might be different. Everything might be different.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth one is what I call transformational. That means it's not following any model. You are creating something totally new that you are leapfrogging. A case in point is in India. India didn't wait to create fiber or copper in the ground. They just short-circuited that and went directly to wireless.
Wow.
Right? So most other countries in the world went through this process of coax, and first copper, then coax, then fiber to the curb, all of that. India just said, we are going to go directly. To me, that's mean transformational. You're creating completely new market. I mean, wireless is not a new market, but for India, it was a new market. So that's why you have more smartphones in India than there are people.
Wow.
So
I love that.
If you look at those 4 models, there is a business and innovation to be had in each one of those 4 quadrants. The strategy might be different, how you do might be different, the margins might be different, but there is still opportunity in each case.
Is it important, in your opinion, to have a team behind you, or can you do this on your own?
You have to have a team behind you.
You have to.
You have to have a team of bright and curious people.
There's that curious again.
You also have to have a team that questions you. Is not just friendly to you, but doesn't have to be obnoxious. It has to say, hey, have you thought about this? What about this? And the messages might not be make you happy, but they will at least take you on the right path. You need to have a team with people with a range of backgrounds, people who are curious, people who are motivated. I think this mantra you might have heard, you can always hire a software engineer.
Yeah.
But it's extremely difficult to hire an enlightened person.
Oh, so true.
Somebody
so
who,
true.
I mean, if somebody is a little
So
less in technology,
Yeah.
but is motivated, hardworking, team player, other things can be taught.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
motivation cannot be taught.
I agree. I agree. So walk me, because you talked about timing. So I've heard recently, and again, it's all about different philosophies, that it's one gentleman had talked to me about the 18-month rule. That is the rule of, you have to figure that innovation 18 months or else the project is over. Do you believe there's a certain time span? Because, I get inventors who come and say, this is taking too long. How long have you been at it? Been at it for 6 weeks. It's just too long for me, Kedma. And I think that's not a long time. So when you think back to all the different projects you were in, is there a certain time frame that we really have to think about when we're trying to develop something that may be transformational, for example?
I think I'll tell you from my experience, when I worked on my last startup, the hardware development that normally would take 12 to 18 months, I was doing in 3.5 months.
Wow. Software
that would take 18 to 24 months, I did a lot of those things in 6 months. So you have to have a higher pace using agile methods. You have to have velocity in the back of your mind, which means 99% of engineers' time is spent in innovating, developing. Mm-hmm. So I made sure that they didn't have the overhead, no monthly status reports, nothing. If I was not in tune with them, and if I needed monthly status report, that in itself is an indication there is something wrong. I'm not close enough to them, and understanding where they are on the development cycle, what issues they are facing, and not in close enough to know how to solve them. Mm-hmm. So to me, it used to be several years. Now it's literally 12 months or less.
Okay, good. Because it's several years, you could probably, there are markets that change, within a year, right? In terms of missing the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it depends, though. In a sense, it depends upon not only the opportunity. Opportunity statement also comes with who your target customer is. Right? Your opportunity might be lost for young kids, but the opportunity might still be open for 40 and above. Or the opportunity might be lost for men, but the opportunity might be open for women.
Right.
So it is also opportunity lost maybe in the United States, but there is still opportunity in Asia Pacific.
Got it.
So it really depends upon what innovation and geography, who the target customer or user is.
Right.
It might be cost. So opportunity might be somebody that has provided a solution, but it costs $200. Now you create a solution that's $20. So there's
huge difference.
There is a huge opportunity.
Right. Walk me through, do you, when you're developing new concepts or working with a team or a startup, how important is the IP behind that? Do you look at concepts that are going to allow you the opportunity to protect your concept, or does it not matter to you?
I would say it doesn't matter to me as much.
Wow.
And the reason is people do IP for 2 or 3 reasons. Mm-hmm. One is, hey, I have 23 patents behind my name. And it's an ego thing.
It's an
ego thing. The other thing is, if you are by yourself and you have a patent,
yes,
and it's infringing upon a patent from a $50 billion company,
yep,
and a company that has 200 lawyers who are willing to defend,
yes,
there is not much you can do.
Nope.
It's not a question of whether you are right or wrong. You don't have the capacity to fight.
Exactly.
So the best thing is, once you have an idea, I'm not saying don't put patents,
right,
applications, do that, but don't hang your hat on that particular patents. I think what is important is to turn that patent into products, get the customer's mindset,
Yep.
Develop a concept, develop a product, take it to 10 customers, get your name known, so that even if a second or third guy comes in, you have already established your brand and name.
Yep.
Right? To me, that is more important. And the worst that you could do is, if there is a big gorilla who comes after you, you still have a way to get yourself eaten by the gorilla and make money in that process.
You always make it positive.
Yeah, let's make it.
Even when we're being eaten by the gorilla. So is there ever a time where you say to yourself as a company, or if you were advising company, maybe we don't want to develop the product, maybe we want to license the technology and have someone else deal with that headache? Do you ever see a value in that? Or what's your thoughts?
I wish we could say that about delivering a baby. No, I think there is a place for that, but I think you have to, in order to know the product, in order to know the problems, in order to know inside and out, you have to be in the thick of solving the problem. Mm-hmm. If it's become purely execution oriented, meaning I know what needs to be developed, I can just give it to a software guy, mm-hmm. They develop it for me, here is the overall mm-hmm. spec. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff can be licensed, offloaded, whatever. Mm-hmm. Most of the stuff, I think, plus your valuation, if you're a startup, goes higher and higher, right. The more content you have into the product or services that you're trying to create. There will be a stage, though, at which you need a much bigger muscle. Yes. Meaning you might be a small company, and there might be a big company that has the distribution networks, has the channel, have the reps all around the world. They might have the entire infrastructure in order to take your product and push it out to the customers. Mm-hmm. Now, there is no possibility of you being able to do it. You have to find a partner. You can license the technology. You can find a way to work with maybe a big company mm-hmm. to be able to distribute your product.
And actually, you bring up something. So many people, are not. I think that there is equity in the connections we have. And a lot of people don't have those connections. They'll come and say, hey, that's great. I would love to have a team. I can't afford a team. And B, I don't know how to get that team. How would you answer that for someone who's trying to get a team together, for them to sort of build that as an equity for themselves? I mean, is there a strategy you've done in the past to really, because not having a team is a problem and not having the right team is a problem. Yeah. So any thoughts around that?
I think throughout our journey in our life, I make a note of people that I know who are capable.
Yes.
I might have thousands of connections on LinkedIn, but out of those 1,000 LinkedIn connections, there are probably 10 or 15 that I really, those are the people who I respect.
Yes.
And if they have connections that they respect, that's my network to pool my team from.
Got it.
Right? The people who are motivated, I think at the end of the day, it's all about honesty, how hard you are willing to work. Are you buying into the overall vision? Mm-hmm. And are you ready to give your 200%? And at the end of the day, you also have to have domain knowledge. And I pull that from a lot of people. One of the I guess luckiest thing for me was I have about 4 or 5 of those people. When I have ideas, I say, hey, can I buy you coffee? We go into a coffee shop or in my home against a whiteboard. And I tell them, just find faults in me.
Yes.
In my arguments.
Yes, I got it.
And they are a part of my team. And that's a part of that team I call thinking team or advising team. The doers is a different story. Doers meaning, hey, I have already outlined what the vision is, what the architecture is. I just need to get stuff done.
Got it.
And technically, in many cases, you can just get done from contract.
Got it.
Even by the way, just as an example, even when in my last job, I had about 40 people working who were contractors working in Noida. Mm-hmm. But my relationship with them, with each and every one of them, was they were part of my team. we enjoyed together. We had celebrations together. Every single milestone that we achieved together, it was we together as a team. The second piece is even though they were contract employees, they had the same status as any employee. When we were taking technical deep decisions, even if I knew the answer, I normally stayed back, let the group, so-called the domain experts, come up with their own solutions. Now, if they were far off, of course, I would step in and do a correction.
Sure.
But most of the time, I would let them come up with a solution. And as a result, each one of them felt like it was their decision to make.
I love it.
So you have to create a right team of people with right backgrounds, but you also have to also make sure your team has the right attitude. It has to be I can make it happen, can-do attitude.
I love it. I love it. I would love if you walked us through an example, and I'm actually working out of my home today, so I'm looking at something I would love to use as an example, because I think it would be very beneficial for people listening to you to see how your brain works. And so you don't even see this. I'm just going to put you on the spot, and we're going to have fun with it. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. So I have 3 boys, 11, 8, and 5, and this is their little sketching board, their etch and sketch. Now, in my opinion, this is a pretty declining market because most kids use tablets and iPhones, but we decided to purchase this because they are a technology. I like to say they're addicted to technology. So we allow them to use this now as so that they can remember what it's like to draw and to get back into the imaginary mind. Now, if we were to step back and let's suppose you were going to bring this idea to you're bringing this to your team, and you said, hey team, I have this great new idea. I have this idea for an Etch-a-Sketch that I think that kids are going to love in the market. How would you work through that concept in your mind? So you haven't developed it. It's just an idea. You're just bringing it to the team right now. Because I think it's important just to get a sense of what are some of those basic steps you would do to help go through the process.
I think, first of all, before I bring the concept, I assume I would have had done a little bit of pre-work of talking to my end users.
Yes.
So I don't have to go far. I have probably lots of family friends, and they have kids. Before coming to the team, I would run it by them and saying, hey, what if I were to develop this? Would you use? I think it's also probably pretty easy to put a concept together, by the way. You know, how would I would put a concept together? I would go to a miller shop, metal industry, and I would take all the burr, coming out of lathe.
Okay.
Fine iron powder. Okay. And all I have to do is take 2 thin papers, cellophane or otherwise, and spread that dust, and then just glue it from the side, and then have a magnet, a pole magnet, and actually be able to draw those things. And I'll be able to show the concept. And it literally takes a few hours to do it.
Perfect.
The concept. It won't look like a final product, but it would be good enough to show them that this works.
Okay.
And then I can take these 2 cellophane things and I can move them, and the magnet is taken away, and they will again look uniform, and I can again draw stuff. So it would be pretty easy, and I think a lot of kids I would show it to would get pretty excited. Because I think boys and girls like magnets, and
they do. They love it.
This stuff like that, right?
They love it.
Now, when I bring it to customer, when I bring it to my team, I would probably say, hey, I have run it by about 50 kids.
Yep.
Yeah, some 0 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 12.
I love it. Yep.
And this is what each one of them has told me. Here is a summary of what they told me. If you want to hear the details, I have recorded their words.
Awesome.
The second thing that I would say, and one of the answers might be that's a dumb product, or it might be a good product.
Okay.
That would be one of my conclusions. If it's a good product as a conclusion, I would say, guys, how do we actually implement it? And
wait a minute. So stop. So your team says it's a dumb product, but your customers want it.
No.
Oh, okay.
My kids are saying.
Your kids say it's a dumb product. Okay. But if they say it's a good product, then you move forward.
Then you move forward.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Then I go to, when I come back to the team,
Yep.
then all kinds of questions will start. How do you make it safe so that the dust never falls off?
Yes.
What if a brother got mad and hit his sister with this, and this whole toy opens up? What falls on the ground?
Right.
These are
right.
These are real things happen. I've seen kids what they do.
Absolutely.
Throw their toys or do.
Yes.
What would happen if the stylus is lost? What happens if this plastic things get stuck?
Yes.
There is actually a bar that goes left and right.
Yep.
What if the plastic rollers get stuck?
Yep.
How do we do and undo them? How do I manufacture that economically? What would the color in the background? Probably hundreds and thousands of questions will come up as to how to productize this.
Awesome.
And especially if it's kids, then safety is going to be on top of that.
Yep.
On and beyond that, if it's going to be a large manufacturing plant, it's a question of how manufacturable this product is. If it requires too much human intervention, it's going to be costly. So I think this would bring up a plethora of questions that I would say, guys, we need to innovate on each and every one of these vectors.
Awesome. And then after that, once you figure that out, then what? When do you go into the market testing after that?
I think there are in-between steps as well. Once I have a good enough 1Z, 2Z products, let's say five units, I would probably take that back to the little kids and say, hey,
okay,
this is kind of what we are thinking. And most kids will tell you, no, this I don't like the color. And I might find out segmentation, maybe girls like violet color and boys might be dark, whatever their preferences are.
Right.
It might be in terms of size and shape because their fingers are small.
Yes.
They should be able to hold stuff. So there are probably, I'm sure there are 150 different items that one can look, and I don't have to necessarily ask them. I can just ask them, here it is, play with it for 2 days.
Now, here's what's interesting. So you have the kids as your primary customer, but it's the parents purchasing them.
Yes.
So when do you involve the parents, and how important is the parents' review of that product? Because here you have, the parents have the money, the kids want the product. Do you still go to the kids, or do the parents matter?
The parents absolutely matter, but it also matters where the parents are.
Okay.
My experience in the United States tells me when a kid wants it, they want it, they will throw tantrum, they will do whatever until parents submit.
It's true.
That's the culture we are in. In some Asian countries, it might they may not need any convincing.
Got it.
If it is seen as an educational toy,
yes,
the focus in many other Asian countries is on learning.
Yeah.
It's about knowledge, and if it helps them to solve, if you can do addition subtractions,
yes,
if most of them just by taking a look at it, they would probably adopt it. And I didn't mean to turn into.
No, I got it. No, I understand. Because I have 3 boys, and I say no, but if they keep on it, I will finally say okay. Just for the.
Right, and I'm sure most people say, well, if I want to buy that, what else you're going to let go?
Exactly.
We also had a rule of 10 toys.
Exactly.
If you want 11 toys, the 10th, the bottommost toy has to go to other children or
right,
or someplace.
Do you ever look at the competition?
I look at it. I also look at the competition, but to be honest with you, that's secondary to me.
Oh, it's secondary to you. Okay.
The reason being, if you create a product that people want, that's what you compete. That's what you go into market with.
Okay.
You don't become better by belittling somebody else. And that's what normally happens in the competition. Competition has that, I have this. I say, no, I have this. This is how it's going to enhance your value.
Right.
I don't know if you have read a book called The HP Way.
Mm-mm.
So this is
a good book you're recommending?
Yes.
Okay.
There is an example. This is Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard's Hewlett-Packard book.
Okay.
There is an example in that, maybe those two were from the old style. They, HP was in the instrumentation business.
Mm-hmm.
Before they farmed out they became Agilent.
Right.
They used to build oscilloscope and measurement equipment. They had another guy who was their friend named John Fluke.
Okay.
And Fluke, just like HP, Hewlett and Packard created HP,
Mm-hmm.
John Fluke created John Fluke Manufacturing Company up in Renton, Washington. And so both were competitors. They were playing in the same business, and they were friends from Army days. And one time there was a fire at John Fluke Manufacturing Company.
Mm.
And as the story goes, and I don't know whether it is Hewlett or Packard, who called John Fluke and said, "Hey, John, we just heard your factory burned. You have no manufacturing capability. I'm running only 2 shifts.
Oof.
We would be more than happy to run one of your shifts in our manufacturing plant."
Oh, okay.
So this is actually inviting a competitor.
Love it.
And because I don't think HP was ever afraid about their product quality, reliability, what they were doing.
Right.
And so was John. But I think the thinking at that time was, even you could invite a competitor to manufacture product in your manufacturing plant.
Wow.
I think that that's not only an indication of big heart, it's also how you treat your competitor. You treat competitor with respect, because everybody is in the business to do what's right.
Yes.
So I basically say there are 2 ways to come to Portland: Highway 26 or 5 or 217. All reach to Portland. Your way might be different than mine.
Right.
We all want to create good products, good services. Our thinking might be different. Our methods might be different.
Right.
That's how I look at competitors.
I love it.
Not as an enemy, somebody to be aware of, and focus on yourself to create better products that meet customers and users' needs.
So going through all the experiences you've had over the years, walk us through the absolute worst things to do in this field. Tell us about things you should never do when you're in the process of innovating. And I know you're pretty clear in terms of the imagination, but have you realized pitfalls that you really have to pay attention to? Because I think that it's important for people listening to not fall on their face. And if there is any value that you can bring on what should you avoid or what should you be careful about when you're working through this, I think it would be valuable for them to understand.
I think for most innovators like me, it's not important whether my idea gets implemented.
Okay.
Many times it is whether I get heard. Right? Many times I have seen I take some new ideas, or if somebody comes to me and new ideas, I never ever say, "That's not going to work." I think you have to let them, even if you know it's not going to work, you have to let them come to their own conclusions. You ask questions. How about this? How about this? How about this? How about this?
Yeah.
And because the worst thing and the last thing that you could do is kill their innovative mind. I think last time I had mentioned to you in our last interview, we talked about Saturn V rocket.
Yes.
Right? Saturn V rocket went to the moon, and we see that as the greatest achievement of mankind. But how many people know how many rockets have burned right on the pad, maybe have gone 1 mile up and exploded, or went into direction, or went and plunged into the sea.
Yep.
So you have to go through many wrongs before you can turn one into right.
Absolutely.
The luckiest are the souls who do it in the first time they're successful right at number 1.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. I don't know if I ever shared with you a true story where I learned my lesson about innovation. This was about 7-8 years ago. A gentleman came into my office, and I swear he looked like Albert Einstein. White hair, lab coat, and he plops down this thing and he says, "This is the answer to all the monsters hiding in kids' rooms." And I thought, what monsters? Well, you know, those monsters under the bed and in the closet, in the attic. Now, I always have a little red button for security if someone comes in for my assistant to run and save me. And I said, well, tell me more. And he had done a lot of study where, actually back then, Disney, before they launched Monster Inc., had done a interview with parents. And close to 90% of the parents, when asked, how many of them as a young kid were afraid of monsters in their room, almost 90% said
Wow.
yes. And even my own children, they won't go to the downstairs of my basement. Why? Mom, because there's a monster down there, right? So anyway, he came to me with this idea, and it was essentially a liquid, all natural liquid form to get rid of monsters. He called it the Monster Basher. But I had a lot of issues with this because I'd been in the innovation realm for almost, 8-9 years at the time. And I started thinking, okay, why do you have to bash the monsters? Can't they just silently leave? What if you give the liquid and then you run out of liquid? Will they come back bigger? What if you give the liquid in the home and then you go over to grandma's house? Can they follow you? I had all these technical process. How do I tell my kids, are there really monsters? Do we go through it? Do we need an exorcism? I just went on and on and on. And I forgot the most important piece. I wasn't his customer. Sure, I had kids.
Yeah.
And yes, I was a parent, but I wasn't a parent willing to buy that.
Yeah.
And he got picked up by an equivalent of Shark Tank, Dragon 10, and ended up getting an opportunity to license a portion of this in a typical of like a Walgreens there. My lesson was it comes down to the customer.
Yes.
Does the customer want it? Are you solving a problem? And you know what problem he was solving? The kids were afraid, and the parents wanted the solution.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. And I think you bring up another good point about there could be multiple customers, just like kids were a customer.
Yes.
There were paying customer, which is you.
Yes.
And your husband might be the paying customers. So you have to have some way of communicating the value to parents as well, which is to say, again, I'm just winging it, but it could be your kids are going to be bored.
Right.
The kids are not going to come into your bedroom at 11 o'clock. So
Exactly.
One of the advantages might be you might get good sleep.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Whatever, if you were told your advantage as to how your life can become simpler.
Yes.
Then you have both the kids and the parents both together.
Right. And I think you nailed it. And part of the challenge, and I'd love to hear your thought, part of the challenge with new ideas or transformational is the education piece.
Yeah.
You have to have that education piece because you're creating a new concept that for many people, they don't have a place in their mind to go with that. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's the added complexity of how do you take this concept and then also educate the consumer, like you said. Here are the benefits, especially if it's something they've never, they don't have any frame of reference to compare it to.
Can I differ with you?
Yeah, I'd love it.
The first thought that came to my mind is I have my niece's daughter,
mm-hmm.
and she was busy doing something. She had a little one, and she wanted to cook because she needed 1 hour of her time. She gives her tablet to her 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't need to be educated. I'll tell you, within literally in 5 seconds, he figured out that doing this meant something.
I love it.
I agree the education part, but it doesn't have to be sit down rigorous education. They could be just observing it. And then they understand the mode. Doing this means I can move pictures like this. Or if I have a character there, and if I put my finger on that, they go oink oink.
Yep, that's it.
That is. But the education, as long as it's not destructive, meaning by doing something it actually destroys it. Other things, most kids can figure things out.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. And I think the education was more on the parents. The kids, easy. It's the parents,
Yeah, and the point is to make that user interaction so intuitive.
Yes.
Or reduce where you don't need manuals to read. I mean, look at WhatsApp, right?
Oh,
WhatsApp
yes.
being used. I know in India, there are farmers who can't read or write, have this with WhatsApp on, and they know how to take a picture, how to send the picture, how to record everything.
Amazing.
If I can make a completely illiterate farmer to use WhatsApp,
yes,
it tells the volumes about how easy the user interaction is.
Yeah. Wow. And that's really powerful. Just from the social component, just changing their life and giving them an opportunity to express the language in a way where they don't have the traditional language.
Yeah. And most of the data that they want is they want to know where seeds are available, right. What seeds to sow when. Mm-hmm. They want to know about weather and when is the monsoon coming or not. And most of that is in visual language. So they don't have to learn anything. They have known, they have a cloud icon with water coming out of it. They can click and they can see,
Yep.
the weather.
The weather.
They have a seed icon. They can seed. And then you have, wheat or rice or whatever. You can just click, click, click. And then it shows you from where to when.
I love it. I love it. So if you were going to give, the audience sort of 3 best practice or your philosophy for them to really focus on, what would it be? What would you tell someone right now who maybe is not even, they're really at that seed stage. They're at phase 0. They're at the fuzzy part. They're not even moving forward. What kind of suggestion or mentoring or guidance could you offer them, as they're hearing you speak?
You mean in terms of innovation?
Yeah.
I think this also we talked last time. One thing is when you are looking at new innovation, you have to be highly confident that this is going to work. You have to envision in your own brain how users might use it, because many users may not be using it. So you're extrapolating that and see how they are using it and have a clear statement of what value you are adding in their lives. Very clear idea as to whether it is in terms of cost, benefit, new features, whatever that is, right? You have to have a very clear vision as to what you are building, whether in terms of products or services, and how it's going to benefit the end user or customer. The second one, once that's crystallized and solid, the question is about persistence and hanging in there, because all along through the process, you are going to get 999 people to say how dumb and stupid you are. And there's going to be one person who is going to say, yeah, right on. So you have to be convinced that what you're doing is right, in spite of lots of naysayers.
I love it.
The third thing is to be, just like I basically said, you have to be convinced that you are right, your path is right. You also need to be surrounded by people who are your greatest critique, so that when you are innovating, they will tell you what the pitfalls are, what the right things are, what the wrong things are. Now, that doesn't mean you have to listen to everything. At least you should get an alternate viewpoint to say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And you still may end up doing what you need to do. You don't, just because advice is given to you doesn't mean you have to follow the advice. You have to take that advice into consideration, because after all, it's your business, your idea, relevance is to you, and you have to see whether their advice fits in there. And then the last one is never lose sight of the end customer.
I love that. Now, I just want to add sort of an addition to that, just because there will be people who are on this listening who maybe work for a company that is not as excited around innovation. They're more risk averse. would you give the same advice to that person, that employee who says, right now I'm not, launching my own company, but I'd love to create innovation within the company I work for. But leadership is really not open to innovation. They're a bit risk adverse.
Yeah.
How would you offer suggestions to that individual? Because I can tell you that I'm very lucky. I happen to be involved in a wonderful college that it really takes to innovation. But I would presume there's a lot of people who don't have that flexibility. What kind of advice would you offer them?
I think my advice to them is probably very similar, which is you have to trust in yourself. If you aren't convinced yourself, you're not likely to convince anybody.
Okay.
But the second point is you have to, if within the company, if you cannot even find one soul that sides with you, then maybe that's not the place.
Okay. Got it.
Time to ship out.
Time to ship out.
If there is one place, one person, you have to have an ally. That's the nature of the problem. You have to have an ally who sides with you, who is ready to put you in a separate room so that you could follow your passion. But as most people will allow you to do that if they see some advantage for themselves in that process. Mm-hmm. So my suggestion is when you do make a proposal for innovation, you have to also see how it benefits him or her, the person in position.
Got it.
At the end of the day, everybody's selfish. They want more stock, more money, more salary, more equity. So if your reason can help them become better, mm-hmm. then they are likely to help and support. And the other thing is many times it's okay to do work under the table and actually create a concept. It's a lot easier to show something working.
Yes.
Than have PowerPoint and foilware. Right. Even if it is crude, even if it is this, there is one more thing, which is if you can make it happen, which is before even asking anybody, talk to your customers, potential customers, and have one or two or three or four testimonials saying, hey, what Sandy is doing, we really like it. If you build what he's telling you, we'll buy X.
I love it.
Even if it is few.
Right.
But it has to have validation by somebody who is not part of your company.
I love it. I love it.
And you can add more. For example, you can it doesn't have to be the direct customers. It could be customers. It could be a system integrator. It could be many times. It could be I call it friends and families mm-hmm. who are ready to support you mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. in a small way to create this innovation.
I love it. I love it. So, gosh, you made me think of something two more things before we go, because I was fielding so many questions in my mind. The first is, now I just lost my train of thought.
Not a problem.
No, it's going to come to me. Well, I want to make sure that before we go, I remember what it is. Can you give an insight of sort of what's next for you? Because there's going to be people listening to this saying, I want to get a hold of him. I want to find out how he can help me. Can you give an insight of where do you see your next sort of place to go? And because there'll be people excited that may want to reach out to you, and I want to be sensitive to not bombard you. So, do you have a sense yet of where do you see yourself going, and what type of people would be okay in terms of reaching out to you? Because people will be listening to this and will be excited to want to hear more from you.
I think the types of people who can approach me are the people who are curious.
Yes.
people who have a flame in the heart.
Yes.
To make a difference.
Yes.
To somehow at the end of the day, we have, right from when we're Homo sapiens, every single innovation that we have come across is either to make us happy. Now, whether it made us happy or not, that's a different story. But the original idea was to make things cheaper, better, easier for us to be more happy.
Yes.
Right. That's why we have pumps on wells. We don't use buckets anymore to pull out water.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. So we don't have bullock carts, we have cars.
Right.
But we still don't have a global sense.
Yes.
Because every time we bring innovation, the good comes bad. And the bad is something we also have to be very cognizant about.
Mm-hmm.
So I want people who not only think about a solution, but think of a solution in totality.
Yep.
For example, if we are going to bring up cars, I want people to think about, well, what happens to the smoke that comes out?
Yes.
Right? What happens when the car is total?
Yes.
What do we do with metal, plastics, cloth, various types of precious metals, all kinds of stuff in it. So over the years, it might be because of my gray hair or maturity or age, whatever you want to call it. I think I have developed a renewed interest and focus on making this a better place.
I love it.
Not better in a myopic sense.
Yep.
So, but in a womb to tomb sense.
Yep.
Meaning, if I'm going to create a laptop, I want to make sure what happens to the laptop when the laptop is dead.
Yes.
What happens to the plastic? What happens to the screen, keyboard, gold, cadmium, whatever precious materials are there? I want to think through. I think I have, irrespective of what the world opinion and political figures might be saying, I'm truly believing that we are responsible for a lot of the chaos in the world in terms of whether it is growing temperature of the earth, whether it is water and reduced resources. In the United States, being next to Columbia River, we think, what about water? Because we have plenty of water.
Yep.
You go to many places in Africa and India, water is a prime resource.
Yep.
I'll give you a simple example. 73% of water that's drinkable, of the total drinkable water, 73% of the water is used by industry. Mm-hmm. So we only have a very small percentage to actually drink the water. Mm-hmm. Now, it is also said that in municipalities, sometimes water is wasted to the extent of 30 to 35% water is wasted. Mm-hmm. People don't even know where the water goes. It is leaked or whatever. It is also said, what I have learned is Tokyo is the only place where only 4% of water is unaccounted. Mm-hmm. People actually don't know where 4% of the water goes. So such a precious resource, I'm saying, what is innovation? What is my industry? What is Internet of Things helping to solve basic problems? Another resource is gas. Another resource is water. Another resource is electricity. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why I'm extremely delighted with LED lights is that's a direct example of saving kilowatts and kilowatts of energy.
Yep.
And thereby, so going forward, you asked me what kinds of things I want to do. I'm passionate about Internet of Things. I want to apply Internet of Things to solve problems in homes, whether it is security or utilities, savings. It could be adult healthcare, meaning aged people healthcare. Yes. It could be just detection of carbon monoxide or radon. Those are kind of the home. I want to solve problems for buildings and offices, which tend to be around HVAC and lighting and occupancies. It could be in hospitals. It could be in industrial, into robotics and worker safety, toxic gases. I want to work in energy, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. How do we save electricity? It could be retail. Mm-hmm. How do we make this entire process most efficient? There are probably a dozen verticals that I look in Internet of Things and say, what can I do? What can I do to bring technology to bear on these problems so we become a good citizen of the planet?
I love it. I love it. And actually, one of the things that reminds me of is a couple of years ago, I went to Asia. It was the first time my husband and I had to wear masks because of the air quality. And we talk, we're so blessed here in Oregon because, we don't have that. But, it was such a wake-up call to see that the majority of people living there, every day, masks.
In Delhi, in New Delhi,
face.
In Delhi, the maximum allowable index of pollution is 100.
Right.
And many times in the middle of Delhi, that index is 1,000. So, and I'm looking at that saying, why? There is plenty of technology. Without doing much, I can reduce that to nil.
Yeah. No,
I mean, simple things. I look at windmills.
Yep.
Windmills are huge. They weigh ton. They're highly difficult to maintain. And one thing that I have not understood, that's kind of what I'm looking on the side right now, just exploring, is why not have radial windmills? It is just like a vertical cylinder. You have seen those fans in Costco, right? Costco.
Sure.
Why not in the behind my house? I could install 2 or 3 verticals.
Right.
Where birds are not going to get caught. It's not going to make much noise.
Right.
They are going to be vertical, so that all the weight is going to be right in the ball bearings. It's going to be a lot easier to maintain.
Yes.
And make it cheap, so that you can generate your own electricity.
I love it.
And that's why I also love SolarCity, but that Elon Musk has just acquired. Because there is really no reason why every roof, every wall, every facade cannot be generating electricity.
Absolutely.
I do understand there are political factors, that the major companies who are in the distribution creation business might be against it.
Right.
It hits the core of the business, but they could as well think about moving their business from the traditional methods to more innovative methods. So the business is still there for them to take on.
Yep, absolutely. Now, before we go, you have to show your first new invention, because I love it. Just tell the last story. It's such a great story, and it really speaks to who you are. So if you can just let the audience know, it's sort of your first, that moment and that example, because I think that's a powerful message.
Yeah, I wanted to explain that I built a computer. My very first, as it turned out, it was more of a calculator than computer. But at that time, I was probably, and I'll tell you a little bit of motivation on how it went behind that. At about age 10, I have first learned the word computer. That a machine was able to add and subtract. And there used to be machines called facet. Olden times, when you had a handle, you pull and it did additions. And I saw some of those in banks early in the 70s. But around the same time, when I was really young, somebody told me there was a computer in my hometown for a weather service. It was used for weather service. It was an IBM 1401 and with punch cards.
Wow.
And I knew there were actually 2 punch cards, 300 cards per minute and 600 cards per minute. I still remember what the speed of the card reading was.
Wow.
So one read 6 a second and 3 a second. And I wanted to see that, and I found out that this was in a local nearby observatory, and I wanted to see that. So I went to the front door of that observatory and said, "Hey, I want to see a computer." Of course, the guard on that said, "Go away," because I was probably about yay tall. And I said, "No, I want to see the computer." And he wouldn't give me a time of the day. So I finally decided I'm going to just keep standing there until somebody, a big officer in a car came out. And I was going to stop the car and say, "I want to see a computer." And this happened for a day or two, if I remember. And finally he said, "Let me ask." So he went inside, talked to somebody, and reluctantly finally said, "Okay, now you can come up with me." And then typical things, don't touch anything.
Right.
All the precautions. And that's when I saw the first computer.
Wow.
With big spools of tape drives.
Wow.
And I came and decided that I wanted to build a computer as well.
Wow.
So I had no idea. I didn't know how, when, where, how. But I had this desire to build a computer. Now, the funny thing happened was, at that time, we had a rule in our home that after 8:30 or maybe 9 o'clock, lights were off. Everybody went to sleep. But during the day, I had homework and chores to do, and I could never find time. So I finally found I had a little torchlight in our home, and I would take all the sheets over my head with the torchlight on.
Oh my God.
And then I would envision what it would be like. And then to make the long story short, I finally figured out how to get it done all by myself.
Wow.
I didn't ask anybody. And so this is what it
Let's see what it is.
So I actually, last time I went to India, I found
computer.
This was the prototype that I found.
Baby computer. I love it.
And this piece of paper that you see here is the actual piece of paper from 1969.
Wow.
And the output came on lights.
Wow.
1 through 20. And on the left-hand side, you will see it says, I think, special prize.
Yeah, special prize. Yes.
ESO Science Club.
Yes.
And the story behind that is, you probably know ESO is a petroleum company. If you go up and drive in Canada, you'll see ESO petrol pumps.
Yep.
There are gas stations with their ESO petrol pumps. So they used to sponsor a science club for college-going kids.
Wow.
And I said, I had this desire to show my innovation there as well. And I went to a local place, which is like 3 or 4 miles away. I went and did the same routine. I said,
wow.
I want to see a general manager there at the ESO Petroleum local location. I also remember the name of the guy, managing director. His name was Bambawale.
Okay.
I still remember his name. So I said, hey, I have something that I would like to show it in the science club, but your rule says it is only college kids are allowed.
Right.
And I said, why? As long as it's a credible innovation, why does it matter whether I'm a kid, college kid, or school-going kid? And I was barely 12 years old, and I was like in 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and he kept on saying no. And I said, no, I use the same technique. Eventually, he's going to go home. So I stood outside the gate in hot Indian summer.
Oh, my God.
Until the guy gave in and said, come on in.
Wow.
There I meet with Mr. Bambawale. He was a big, stout guy behind a huge ceremonious table with
wow.
Awards and books, typical MD.
Oh, my God.
And I was this little high school guy in shorts and
oh my goodness,
and a white shirt. And I showed him what I wanted to do, and he used the same technique. Like, this is not for you. And I said, and I used the same argument. I said, so what? And eventually he gave up and said, okay, I'll make an exception, and you can show it. And eventually, when I showed it, a group of judges came by. And that's how there was a special prize that was given.
Wow.
We go to this.
But what's really powerful about that story is at such a young age, you were so determined. It's like you had this unbelievable confidence. And no matter what, I can imagine, these are adults in powerful positions saying no to you.
Yeah.
And you're saying, so what?
Yeah.
So what to that rule?
Yeah. And then the way I argued is saying rules are made by you.
Yes.
You can change the rules. And I said rules have to have rationale behind them.
Yeah.
And if your end objective is to show innovation to other people, then who shows it is immaterial.
Yes.
Your rules are artificial, in my humble opinion, but and he agreed.
Wow. And that's a huge lesson. That passes on even today. Even today, there are rules where you can look at that and say, "So what?"
Yeah.
Right? So
some make sense. Some make sense. Some
make sense.
The rule of green means go and red means stop.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Right.
Right. The speed of 55 limit versus why shouldn't it be 75 miles per hour?
Of course.
It's a rule that can be argued.
Of course.
Right? So somebody could say it depends upon the state of the car manufacturing.
Right.
If the cars are strong, reliable, safe, okay, now we can think about increasing the limit.
Yes.
So you have to pick and choose what's worth pushing back and what's not.
I love it.
And some place you have to say it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Wow. Well, I know we have probably gone well over an hour. So before we close, is there anything else you want to share? Because I have been fielding questions to you.
Right.
So anything else that's important for you?
I think I gave you an example last time, which I wanted to bring back again. It's about curiosity. It goes back to curiosity, is having curiosity in everything.
Yes.
Right? It could be curiosity about, you go and buy a bag of beans at Fred Meyer.
Yes.
Where did that bag of beans come from? Right? Who all touched that bean of bags all the way from farmer to eventually it ending up in your kitchen?
Yep.
It is fascinating to just figure out, what does the value chain look like?
I love it.
You might look at plastics, you might look at paper. I'm sure 99 out of 100 people won't be able to tell you where the paper comes from. What is the process from trees to paper? Even if we say, oh, don't kill trees, right? Use less paper. How exactly is the paper made? That's simple things we take for granted, but we have no knowledge. And there is no substitute for knowledge. You have to know how things get done. Why are they done? Who does them? What are the difficulties that are found? And another example that I think I gave you last time, the Tony Awards that we do every year.
Mm-hmm.
And one time there was, I think I mentioned you to that as well, that there was a mic and Tony, what's his name?
Oh, yeah.
Danny DeVito came in.
Yes.
He's like 4 feet, 8 inches or something.
Right.
And there was, along with him was a 6 foot tall blonde lady. And they both wanted to talk after receiving the award. And they had to adjust manually because Danny DeVito was doing like this because the microphone was way up and the lady had to go bow down. And I said, hey, that's a problem. One can easily solve it by having a microphone that automatically adjusts to the person in front of the microphone.
Right.
Because mouth is the hottest part of our body because we breathe air in and out. If I can have a sensor in the microphone and a rack and pinion mechanism that automatically lowered it, then I started thinking, well, that's a mechanical. I can do even better than that. I can have a microphone cone that automatically adjusted.
Yep.
So that adjust the direction in software. So the microphone is where the microphone is. And it just focuses where to get the input from depending upon the person that is talking.
I love it.
It's a simple example every day in and day out that we can look at.
But you mentioned curiosity, and I don't know if you think it's the same way. I think of it as imagination. And I always have a statement, there's more imagination in the mind of a 3-year-old than in the average adult.
Yeah.
And, I think part of that is giving yourself permission to imagine. I have to just say something really quickly. About a year ago, I get a phone call from my son, who at the time was 7 years old, from his teacher. And they call me and say, Mrs. Ough, we're having a concern with your middle son. I said, what's the problem? Well, every time I tell him to do something, he challenges me. He's always negotiating. I said, okay, what's the problem? He says, she says, well, I tell him to do something. He says, well, why should it be done this way? Maybe it should be done this way. Or I tell him to do something and he gives me a whole explanation of, his position on it. And I said to the teacher, well, I respect your opinion, but I teach my children to negotiate. And I also teach them to be in a position where they can question, in a respectful way, why something is being done.
Yeah.
And, if for her, it was something she wasn't used to.
Yes.
Right. And so the reason I bring this up is I think that there is, and I can only speak to my own experience having done this for, a decade, there is a little bit of a disservice right now with people who get into certain maybe employer situations, and they're almost trained not to be curious.
Yeah.
They are trained not to imagine. They are saying, here's the information, follow protocol, and stick to the plan. And if you divert from that, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And so I have, when I hire people, I always have to say, they say, what's your training? I said, well, the first 6 months of training is I have to unlearn you.
Yeah.
I have to spend 6 months teaching you how to be curious, teaching you how to imagine. So I love where you're going, but I would just have to say that for many people, they haven't had that opportunity that is so ingrained in who you are.
Yeah. But it can, in all fairness, that opportunity is not only in the work situation, right? Even at home, you might be doing chores.
Yes, of course.
You can always find a way to do them in half the time.
Yes.
So, we all of us have a personal life, a family life,
yeah,
social life, and a work life.
Right.
And if not one, there are plenty of other places to think innovatively. The other thing that you mentioned about imagination, curiosity, and I think those to me are complementary things. Imagination is, in my mind, what could be possible.
Yes.
Curiosity is understanding what is already been produced, how that even works.
Okay.
And then saying, now with that body of knowledge, how do I use it to create whatever I'm imagining possible?
I love that.
So imagination is what could be possible.
Right.
For example, imagining one day I'd be able to go to Mars.
Yes.
Or find a way to have a ladder to the moon, created out of nanoparticles.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes, how for that you have to know how ladders are made today.
Yes.
You have to know how rockets go up. They may not be powerful. And then a combination of that and you require some additional imagination as well. So you might be using kerosene or oxygen and hydrogen as basic fuels for your rocket. But then you might think, if Mars is a long haul, maybe those rockets are not okay.
Right.
Maybe I need to use ion rockets to get there. Right. But at least you have some level of basis in understanding curiosity about how it is done today.
I love it.
You don't have to follow it. You have to have enough knowledge. So if somebody says, how come you aren't using that? You should be able to say, I'm not using it because 1, 2, 3, 4. Here are the limitations and here are the positives of what innovative thinking that I have.
I love it. I love it.
So that to me is a method of achieving what you want to achieve.
I love it. Anything else before we close?
No, I'm really happy. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. But
thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to have a dialogue with you. I appreciate your time.
Oh, I appreciate your time. So I will close, and we will make sure that we have this available for them. And if they want to get a hold of you, we'll make sure, with your permission, that they have a way to reach you. And you made it really clear what you're passionate about. And I think that people are going to be really pleased to just have a chance to experience through this, who you are and the work you're doing. So thank you.
This is just tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg. That's right. All right. Well, I'm going to close now.
My contacts are on my LinkedIn, both my email and phone number.
Yes, and we'll make sure that whenever we send this out, that it makes it available, and we'll give you a copy as well.
Yeah, and I'm looking for. As I said, I am looking for a lot of opportunities even today.
Yep.
Either in a small startup formation or big companies, but looking for small company atmosphere within a big company, or any other method is okay.
I love it. All right. Thank you.